What is up, music makers? Jack here. If the backdrop looks different, that's because it is. I drove about 6.5 hours and ended up here for this video. One of the biggest challenges we face as home studio music makers is making our own quality samples or just getting good quality recordings out of our instruments. Now, if you can pull off good quality home recording, it's one of the easiest ways to get new and unique content for your music, your production, your tracks, and all of that. But it can be difficult. In addition, when you're making music at home, you often don't have access to specialized studio spaces. And the spaces you do have access to are often shared with other people, have other use purposes, aren't acoustically treated, and or have noise restrictions, etc. It's kind of a make the best of what you have kind of situation. Now, one instrument that I think can be particularly challenging to record at home is the drums. Even if you're not a drummer yourself, as a producer, having a few drums, a snare, some toms, maybe even a kick drum, and being able to get good quality recordings out of those drums on your own is a game changer. Now, I love the drums, I love playing them. I'm not very good at them as of yet, but thankfully I do know someone who is. To help with this video, I've asked for a hand from a special guest, my friend Matt, aka Goose the drummer. Aside from playing local shows and touring the world, Goose has been recording crazy cool light up drum covers and remote session work for years. All right, now Goose, will you walk us through your setup?
Absolutely. So, custom risen drums that we kind of moved. Just ignore kind of the placement of them right now, but this is clear acrylic with white sparkle fleck on the interior. It was called Risen Drums, now it's Franklin Drum Company. They recently made the switch and I am in love with them. And then I have lights I installed on the inside. So they're just super fun to play, program lights, and check out the light up drum covers for that. I'm low-key obsessed with Zildjian Constantinoples. So I have a Constantinople here. Unfortunately, I cracked it. I've played it super actively for like 6-7 years now, and low-key cymbal repair hack is lawnmower blade sharpener drill bits on a drill. You don't even have to cut metal and risk it's just kind of scary doing that. I ended up just getting that drill bit, and it makes super smooth cymbal repair, which I ended up cracking this cymbal too. It's the only 2 cymbals I've ever cracked. So it's kind of embarrassing, but I was able to salvage them and make them the sound exactly the same and super functional. So here I have a 20-inch Zildjian Crash of Doom. The thing's awesome, super dark. And then this K Zildjian medium thin low 22-inch ride cymbal. And then I have a 16-inch Zildjian Constantinople Crash. And then under, bottom hi-hat, got a custom projection, 16-inch. I saw Paul Mayberry use this as a bottom hi-hat, and I was inspired and tried it, and I love it. So with a bunch of tape on it to keep it a little bit more muted. Got this cheap snare drum that has just been amazing. I think it's a CB700. I don't even really know. I know it's steel, and it's 14 by 6.5. And 42 strand snares are just butter. Big fan of using a tone ring on the snare for really fat kind of sound. And 2 inches seems to be the sweet spot that I prefer. So that's been super nice. I have kind of a menagerie of, or a mix of Yamaha hardware, Yamaha hi-hat stand, and then a DW9000 for the kick. Pretty standard for quality. Then as for mics, using on the kick, we got a Shure Beta 52. I love it, tons of low end, pretty self-explanatory. And then all the toms, I have Sennheiser E604s, which these clips are literally indestructible and they're so easy to use. And you don't have to tighten them or adjust anything. They just plop on. It's so practical. So I love those and they sound great too. Got a SM57 on top and also on bottom. SM57, I feel like you just can't go wrong with that on snare. And then hidden gem are these MXL 991s condenser microphones. These are incredible and dirt cheap, crazy cheap. I actually got one given to me one time in a mic kit and ended up, it came with a 990, I think, and a 991, and I tested both of them just in kind of a mic shootout, and this 991 had tons of high end, and I thought it would be perfect like, I might as well try this on acoustic guitar or like overheads. And I've used them as overheads and I just love them. They've been so good to me. So have 2 of those. And I also have a spare on my desk over there, which sometimes I'll use for room mics. If I want to do like a stereo pair for like, throw them in the corners of the rooms or like 10 feet in front of the bass drum, can be a nice effect. Also have another one over here. So I just have a bunch of them for hi-hat. So they're really good for like bright condensers, catching anything like that's bright, like acoustic guitar. I also think they're good for, but really good like budget, cheap condenser mics that just bright. So yeah, that's kind of my current mic setup here. All these cables are running to, I'll run over here, hooked up via standard like XLR cables to this Midas MR18. This thing is the workhorse. I love it. There's no, like the only knob on this is the headphone jack. So all the gains and everything are done via Wi-Fi, and it just comes with an app that you can use on like iPad or computer, and it's so smooth. It's basically a digital soundboard and 18 channels that if you want to just use it really basically and just like change the gains, you can just do that. Or if you want to build in-ear mixes, it's got up to like 6 auxes that you can use for different in-ear mixes or different sends for like live streams in addition to the main left and right. This thing's just great, but it's around the $600 range, which is probably flying under that and above that here and there. But I think for 16 channels of preamps and then 2 more 1/4 inch, it's just like fantastic. So I love this thing. I'm using usually like 10 to 12 channels to record drums, typically, depending if I'm using room mics. So this just makes it easy. I like not having to like link 2 interfaces together, and it's like just awesome. I love it.
All right, so Goose, you just walked us through your setup, and I would love to take a moment just to talk through a couple questions that I had for you, as well as some thoughts and feedback on your experience recording drums in a space that isn't meant to be a drum recording studio.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what are some things that, at least offhand, are kind of the biggest challenges you've faced getting a good recording sound, getting a consistent sound, being able to set up and record when you want to? I don't know if it's picking up.
Literally right now.
The subwoofer.
Story of my life.
So.
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest challenges is it's in a church. So right now we kind of knew coming into this that it's a Wednesday night. They have youth group. So there's certain times for a church, Wednesday nights, a lot of youth groups meet, or Sunday mornings, obviously, for services, and that are just like off limits and not an option. So that's just the nature of this specific scenario. But as there's like bass guitar sound checking.
Yeah.
So obviously I couldn't record drums now if I wanted to. Another barrier has been, there's a massive like 9-foot by 9-foot window right next to me, which is awesome. I love the light, but for light up drum covers when I need it dark, it's really a barrier. So I ended up spending like $150 or so, or $100, like making this massive curtain and taking this like 20-foot ladder to get up there and putting a curtain on so I could actually record during the day or like different times, because before that I had to shoot at like 7 p.m. or later, which sometimes it'd take me like 4 or 5 hours, and I'd have to go to midnight, and I had no other option, and I got really tired. So and then the other thing is just like the sound, like the room sound, there's a little bit of decay and I can't control that. Oh, there's more music. Yeah, like the decay. So it comes.
It's not the driest room.
Yeah, like it will be there no matter what. And there's some things, I mean, some people are big into like the drum replacement. That helps alleviate it a lot. But if it's a song that you want overheads like really prominent and loud and well recorded, it's nice to have like higher gained overheads and play the cymbals quieter, so you can use more like snare tone from actually the overheads instead of just the snare mics. And that's very, I don't know, there's only so much you can do with that, because there's room sound, and that's just how it's going to be unless I like treat this, but it's just a massive room to treat. So but that's what I have my home kind of set up for. If I want really tight drum sounds, I can record there.
Yeah. So I don't know if you can tell based on the shot here, but this space, there's a lot of concrete on the floor, on the walls, high ceilings. You got a big giant glass window over there. you know, when you're choosing a space to record drums, do you typically prefer those larger, harder spaces, or do you prefer smaller, tighter, you know, carpet, drywall, that kind of thing?
Honestly, I would personally prefer carpet, like soft absorption type things around the room, because then the source of my sound is purely like the drums, and I'm not getting other artifacts or echoes or decay times that I don't want, which are, you can add with reverb, but it goes both ways. Sometimes the room sound just is different than reverb. They sound different, and room sound's very desirable in some scenarios. So I guess I don't like being locked into having to have a room sound, but I also would prefer just more space than less space. So to me, hard walls, concrete type feel, there's like metal rafters in the ceiling, which sometimes when someone opens a door in the building, like they'll like kind of crack or go like, which is also kind of scary for recording. I don't want those things showing up, but just having more space. I have 2 kits set up here and a table and a bunch of spare cases and gear. That's super nice to have. Just extra space. Yeah. So to me, that's like worth it, really functional, but comes with its own challenges. You know, you get more space, but then you also get a lot more decay. So it's, unless you do a massive amount of room treatment.
Sure. So before you had the space, I know you did a lot of covers and recording back at your home in a bedroom studio that you had set up. A lot of the people watching this video on this channel might be in a similar situation, you know, working from a home, small bedroom studio kind of setup. What challenges did you face back at home? I know you've got some roommates. How did you navigate some of those challenges before you got this space?
Yeah, at home, I have 3 roommates. I'm house hacking a home. Which for those of you, I'm into real estate, so for those of you who don't know, I like own the home and then I'm renting to 3 guys on the main level, and then I live in the basement myself. So I'm at least a floor away, but it's just not nice to drum in the home with other people living there. Like it's a big bummer as a drummer especially, and I'm sure almost every musician has this struggle where like it feels like a burden to others, and I hate that feeling when I want to practice or create or even just like relax and play and just be creative. That it feels like a burden to others is a huge bummer. So having another space that I can go that isn't a burden to others is like such a blessing and really valuable, I think, to drummers, and it's worth sacrificing either money or time or making that happen if it's that important to you. So, which it is for me. So
for those people who are, you know, starting to drum, maybe, or for drummers who are looking to start recording for the first time, how expensive do the mics need to be? How much do they need to worry about getting quality mics? How many mics do you think they need as a minimum? And will any mic work, or what's the thought there?
Yeah, I personally think 8 is a great, like, the cheapest starting points. You can always work with what you have, and there's awesome recordings that are like 2 mics or 4, or even an iPhone mic. Like, I personally think focusing on mixing and the production, the post-production side is super, super important. Like I would rather have $100 mic kit, so just crappy mics, and at least individual control of each drum. So having 8 really crappy mics, and then really nice plugins and mixing skill, I think would go a lot further than having amazing mics and poor production skills, and poor like ears and like plugins and such. I think the mixing and post-production goes a lot into it, and that actually changes how I mic things as well, because envisioning like, okay, if this is how I'm going to mix it, I'm gonna place the mic differently, or maybe I want a mic in this placement. So I think thinking bigger and thinking like a producer while you play, especially if you're recording yourself, you literally are the producer. So I think that would be my 2 cents on that. I think the mixing and production mindset is a lot more important, and you can make fantastic recordings with like a CAD mic set. I know that's one of the cheapest I've seen, the CAD. Have you heard of that? Mm-hmm. So, which they're not amazing. Obviously, it's a really low price point, but you can do a lot with it.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like if you're good at what you do, if you're a good producer, if you take time to really hone in that skill and hone in that craft, you really can make cheaper gear sound good. And that's often one of the struggles I feel like new producers or new musicians deal with, is feeling like they have to go out and splurge and buy all the nice gear. But what you end up finding is you can take an unexperienced producer and put him in $1 million studio and he's not gonna make it sound good.
Yep.
You know, it really does boil down to, can you make what you have sound good? And I think that's just, you know, something to always keep in mind, is the gear you have is the right gear. So use that to the best of your ability and make that sound as good as you can.
Agreed, yeah.
If you had to pick one area or one thing or one piece of gear that you think beginners out there looking to get good recordings at home that they should invest in, what would that one thing be?
That's a tricky one. I mean, I'm a huge lover of Ableton Live. And for my brain, it works. To each their own, everyone's brain works differently. But if there's a DAW specifically that just like is super intuitive to you, I would say go for it. And that's mega worth it. Like the first, I think that's probably one of the most important, is the workflow kind of thing. But the other thing I'm thinking of, it's over there, is my interface. Okay. And like the preamps, because those are also a huge element of the puzzle. But I mean, there's so many things that affect the sound, from the actual drums and cymbals, then like, and this isn't in any order of importance, but maybe that's another thing too. But like the actual source, you know, the instrument, and then there's the microphones, and then there's the preamps, and then there's like the conversion to, which I hardly ever notice a quality difference on.
Well, and even then, before that, there's you as a drummer, you know.
Yeah,
your
and
skill,
then too,
right?
the actual person playing, then the instrument, then the mics, then the preamps. And I would say that's about the order that is probably priority, in my opinion. Although mixing should be way up there as well. But yeah, I mean, the actual source, the instrumental list, then the mics, preamps, interface for conversion, and then, mixing after that, I think. I guess to sum it up, I would say with an interface, I would look for one that has clean preamps and enough channels. So I chose the MR18. I love it because I have 18 possible channels that I can use. It has 16 preamps, so I can do 16 mics. Well, that's awesome. And I've never done more than that tracking drums. So that's been like amazing, and it's super flexible, and the preamps sound great. And that's, I would say, the most important piece of recording drums here, because I do go more than 8 channels, and that can be really expensive, or you have to link multiple interfaces together to do that. That piece of gear is, I think, the main thing that sets me apart here, is being able to do more than 8 channels.
I know a lot of drummers out there who might be using, you know, like a 12 or 16 channel mixer going into a stereo 2-track audio interface. But the problem with that, would you agree, is just when you go into that mixing stage, your hands are really tired.
Yeah. Then you can only mix left and right, and you can't, if you want more kick, it's like you need to raise more low end, which just raises low end of everything rather than,
So being able to multi-track.
Individual control is super important, for mixing.
All right, Goose, so we've gone through your setup. You've answered some questions. One final question to leave the viewers with. Do you need a studio to record drums?
Not really right now. I have this space, which is awesome. It's obviously, there's a certain times we're ironically here at an unideal time. But there's tons of time during the week where I can come here. If I want a big drum sound, it's going to have that room mic sound. But I also have a room treated at home, so I don't like to play there a ton or be too loud, because I do have roommates. I like to be respectful for obvious reasons. But if if I have a really important, like close mic'd setup or sound that I'm going for, I can record there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Appreciate it.
Peace out.
Definitely gonna be outtakes at the end of this video.
Matt is the best. I've got water, granola bars, and a towel. And a charger.
Yeah, Jack had to put his bed right in the middle of my room. Like, dang it!
You don't know who we are. We could be stock footage.
remember.